episode titled Night George. It was a normal morning. Everything in the pig family house was calm. Mummy Pig was cooking breakfast in the kitchen. Daddy Pig was sitting at the table reading a newspaper. George was playing on the floor with his dinosaur. Peppa came downstairs and said hello. Everything looked the same as always. George laughed and said, "Dinosaur." Nothing seemed strange. The day was calm. In the evening, George became quieter. Peppa noticed it. He still played, but spoke less. Mummy Pig said he was just tired. Peppa said nothing. During the night, Peppa woke up. The room was quiet. She heard a soft sound, as if someone was walking in the hallway. Peppa got up and looked out. George was standing in the hallway. He was not moving. Peppa quietly called his name. George slowly turned his head. His eyes looked darker than usual. He said nothing. Peppa thought he just could not sleep. She went back to bed. In the morning, everything looked normal. George was playing with his dinosaur again, but he started looking at the windows more often. During the day, he did not go outside. He just sat and watched. Peppa asked if he wanted to play. George quietly said, "No." Peppa was surprised. In the evening, he barely ate. He just sat at the table and looked. At night, Peppa woke up again. She looked at the hallway right away. George was there again, but now he was closer to her door. Peppa did not move. George slowly took a step, then another one. Peppa closed the door. She did not go out. In the morning, everything was calm. George was playing like before. He said dinosaur again. Peppa said nothing. In the evening, she decided not to sleep. She lay in bed and waited. The room was quiet. Then she heard steps. They stopped right at her door. Peppa did not move. The door did not open, but the handle slowly moved down. Peppa closed her eyes. After a few seconds, everything became quiet. In the morning, Peppa went downstairs. Everything looked normal. George was sitting on the floor and playing. Peppa sat next to him. She looked at him. George lifted his head and smiled. For a moment, it felt like his teeth were slightly longer. Then, everything looked normal again. Peppa walks downstairs. Mummy Pig is making breakfast. George is pushing his dinosaur across the floor, and Daddy Pig is sitting at the table reading his newspaper. He looks up and says, "Good morning, Peppa." But right away, Peppa feels that something isn't right. Her dad's voice sounds slightly quieter and more even than usual, without his normal, cheerful tone. He laughs at something in the newspaper, but the laugh sounds strange. Too identical, with no pauses, no breathing, almost like a recording playing. The whole day seems calm, but Peppa starts noticing small things. Daddy doesn't get out of breath on the hill. He doesn't mix up the map. He doesn't trip or fall into a muddy puddle like he normally would. He does everything correctly, too correctly. Even when George spills his juice, Daddy doesn't react the way he usually does. He just says, "That's fine," in a flat voice. His face stays calm. When Peppa tells him an old joke that always made him laugh the loudest, he simply smiles and says, "That is funny." But he doesn't laugh, and his eyes don't change, like there's no real happiness behind them. Peppa decides to test him again. At dinner, she sits in Daddy's usual chair on purpose. Normally, he would notice and joke about it, but he just stands there for a moment, as if he doesn't understand something is different. Then he slowly sits in another chair and continues eating. No joke, no smile. That night, Peppa wakes up because of a quiet knocking sound. Knock, knock, knock. At first, she thinks it's the wind, but it happens again. She walks into the hallway and sees the kitchen light on. Daddy is standing by the wall staring at one spot. He isn't moving. He isn't blinking. "Daddy," Peppa whispers. He slowly turns his head and says, "I am here, Peppa." He smiles, but his eyes look empty. "Why aren't you sleeping?" she asks. "I don't get tired," he replies, and the sentence sounds just as flat as it did that morning. In the morning, everything looks normal again. Daddy laughs loudly, complains that he's tired, breathes heavily after climbing the stairs. But Peppa doesn't believe it. She starts asking questions. "Daddy, remember when we got stuck in the elevator?" she asks. "Of course," he answers without hesitation. "Where was that?" He pauses for a second. "In the elevator," he says, and it sounds wrong, like he isn't remembering, just repeating the word. Later that day, Peppa notices the basement door is slightly open. It's usually locked, and from downstairs, she hears the knocking again. "Knock, knock," she asks Mummy, but Mummy calmly says, "Daddy is upstairs and everything is fine." Peppa knows that isn't true. She carefully opens the door and walks down the dark stairs. The basement feels cold and quiet. The knocking gets louder. In the corner, there is a large wooden box. From inside, someone whispers, "Peppa!" It's her real dad's voice, weak and scared. "Peppa, that's not me upstairs." Peppa spins around. At the top of the stairs stands the new dad. He looks down at her and smiles that same even smile. "I have always been here," he says calmly. His voice now sounds deeper and colder. The lights begin to flicker. The real daddy knocks again from inside the box, asking for help. Peppa quickly grabs a key lying nearby and unlocks it. The real daddy climbs out of breath, dirty, shaking. The new dad slowly steps down one stair and says quietly, "There is only room for one dad in this house.